They got in a fist fight outside the venue when Julius tried to jab Brutus with a French loaf from Bon Ton Bakery, shouting, "Baguette too, Brute!" He said afterwards he was just trying to even things up.
Yeah. That's the way. That's the way you do it. I guess. I don't know. Didn't Caesar love Brutus as a son? I think that Julius Caesar would. I don't know. Would he forgive him? Would he forgive Brutus? You know, that's a big question right now in Western society. Is this, ever since I don't mean to bring it up, but a few months ago, was it a few months ago? Maybe 2 months ago, I don't know, month and a half, the question was brought up, like, forgiving people. And one take I heard on this idea of forgiving people is by taking responsibility of forgiving someone when the world at large is not going to forgive that person for doing what they did, sort of removes you from having a guilty conscience about what's going to happen to that person, because you know that person's not going to be forgiven by the public at large. So by forgiving that person, it's more or less you, in a way, scapegoating the public into not forgiving that person. In the simpler terms, like, because now you won't have to have the burden or weight on your own conscience for not forgiving that person, because like, there is this weight of guilt attached to not forgiving someone. And it's something I have personally battled with for a year now. Do I forgive this person? And I've realized time and time again, when you forgive people, especially when they've done things that are malign, those people will return to doing those things. Because what I've realized is a lot of the negative and malevolent things that happen to one and happen in that person's life are because they're creating the emotional availability for those things to happen. You see, once you create that wall of detached emotion, it doesn't allow you to surrender yourself to these villains, because it's a power dynamic which grants them access to do these things. So, by not forgiving someone, you are verifiably denying them access to hurt you. So people get all wound up in this idea of forgiving people as being this benevolent thing. But I don't see how that can be benevolent, because if you forgive someone and then that person hurts you, then forgiving someone is not a good thing, because the end result is someone gets hurt over it, even if that person is you. So by not forgiving that person, well, now nobody's getting hurt because now they can't hurt you. You see, there's a contradiction in forgiving people who do malevolent things, because like I think the whole idea behind it is to prevent hurt. But if you're hurt in the process by forgiving this person, then you're not erasing the hurt, you're only perpetuating their malignity, the pain they create, the suffering. So forgiving people is something that I believe has to be in the hands of a moral society in many ways. Like I think like individual forgiveness is something, again, like when someone forgives this person when the entire world is not going to forgive this person, then it almost makes sense to forgive that person because the rest of the world is going to condemn that person. But on this individual level where you don't have the protection of a larger society who is and are going to condemn that person for the things they've done, then I see no point in forgiving them because it's just going to eventually lead to you being hurt by that person again. Because the way I see it is we submit and surrender ourselves to people and we allow them to do these things by emotionally making ourselves available to them. Because I've learned throughout my life that when you put up that emotional front, people are going to tear it down. But when you detach, when you emotionally detach, there's nothing there for them to pursue. So, forgiving people, I believe, is necessary in this sort of quantitative measure that's kind of ambiguous and hard to explain. But more or less, if it's like an accident, if it's a mistake, then forgiving someone is completely acceptable and good for the better part of society and your relationship with this person. You know, they screwed something up by mistake. It wasn't intentional. But if they keep screwing something up like repeatedly, then it's beginning to dawn on you that this is intentional. Then you shouldn't forgive that person. Now, if someone, you know, breaks into your house and robs you blind, no, I don't believe you should forgive that person. Or maybe you should because, well, according to what we would perceive as being U.S. law, the criminal and justice system should punish that person. But, you know, things are a little different in this political climate. So I don't think forgiving them is a good idea at all at this point because the justice system, I don't know when it's ever truly ever, you know, had a role that was significant in my life that, you know, relieved me of anything other than maybe a few moments. But, you know, when I absolutely needed like police or something, you know, but like if it was something where it's like an injustice was done and this was taken to the courts, it's like the courts have never cared. You know, I typically think that police do their jobs, but the court, unless you have a lot of money, I think accidents are forgivable. And mistakes, judging on what you view as a mistake, you know, a lot of people will sit there and say, oh, I made a mistake, I shouldn't have done that, you know, like you know, like I slapped my wife around and hit her a few times, it was a mistake. I mean, okay, a mistake certainly isn't an accident in that scenario. That was clearly, like, you can say it was a crime of passion, but still there's intention in that passion. Just because it's a crime of passion doesn't necessarily mean it's excusable or a mistake. You know, if you rob a liquor store because you needed the money, is that a mistake? It's certainly desperation, but it's not a mistake. It's by no measure an accident. But forgiving people is something, I don't know, it might make you feel good inside, but for how long? You know, especially if it's the type of situation where the abuse is going to be repeated. You might feel okay for a moment, but I don't know. I'm going to allow people to make up their own minds, because you can take this with a grain of religious salt or intellectual salt. Doesn't really matter what type of salt you take it with. It just depends on what you think is necessary or humanly. What else can I say?
Who did you think you were reincarnated from?
Anne Boleyn's my best guess. She had green sleeves, didn't she? And I often have such a splitting headache that a whole beheading thing might come as a relief. How about you, Murphy? You think you had a past life?
If so, I can't imagine what I did to deserve the life I've got now. Can I attend one of your past life parties?
If we get them up and running again, I don't see why not. You need to pay the membership fee, though. $50 per person. I know.